James had never been a man of many words, but he had a reputation that stretched far beyond his small garage. In a modest corner of a sleepy town, tucked away behind stacks of old car parts, rusty engines, and a workbench littered with tools, James worked tirelessly as a mechanic. The name James the Mechanic was known by most in town not for his flashy advertisements or fancy workshop, but for his sheer talent and ability to fix things others deemed unfixable. James wasn't always a mechanic. In fact, he grew up in the very same town, struggling to make ends meet. His parents had worked hard but had little to show for it. With his father passing away when James was young, he learned early on to fend for himself. He never had the luxury of expensive tools or formal training. But he did have something that many didn't, an extraordinary memory. He could look at an engine and know exactly how every part fit, what the issue was, and how to fix it. It was a gift, one he hadn't fully understood until years later when he decided to start working on cars. As a child, he would sit beside his father while he worked on the family's old truck. His father wasn't the best mechanic, but he had a passion for it, and that passion was infectious. James watched closely, studying every motion, every adjustment. By the time he was a teenager, he had started fixing the neighborhood kids' bikes and later on cars. What was once a hobby turned into a job as people from all over town began seeking his help. However, no one in the town expected James to ever do anything beyond his little garage. It was a well-known fact that he had a modest, even humble lifestyle. No one knew about the bet, though, the bet that would change everything for James. It all started on a quiet afternoon when a wealthy businessman named Gregory Richmond drove into James' garage. Gregory, a man who had more money than he knew what to do with, had heard whispers about James' skills. His luxury sports car had broken down, and no mechanic had been able to diagnose or repair the problem. The car was a rare model with a customized engine, and Gregory was desperate. When he arrived at James' shop, he was greeted by the sight of a cluttered workspace and an old, tired mechanic who didn't seem like someone who could fix an elite sports car. But Gregory had no other choice. "You the one they say can fix anything?" Gregory asked, his tone skeptical. James didn't answer immediately. He was studying the car, a sleek, black machine that looked like it belonged in a showroom. He ran his hand along the hood, his eyes narrowing in concentration. It was then that the challenge was issued. Gregory smirked. "I'll make you a deal. I'll leave the car here for you to fix. You have 1 week. But here's the catch. If you can't fix it, I'll pay you just $1 and I'll take the car back. If you succeed, I'll pay you what you're worth, maybe even a lot more. But I'm betting you can't do it. There's no way a mechanic like you can handle this car." James didn't flinch at the taunt. He had heard words like that before. His life had been filled with challenges, and this one was no different. He didn't have the fancy tools Gregory was used to. He didn't even have the knowledge of modern engines that most high-end mechanics had. But what he had above all else was his memory. He had spent years working on all kinds of engines, dissecting them, memorizing the way they functioned. He could picture the inner workings of any machine in his mind. James nodded, accepting the bet without hesitation. "I'll fix it." As Gregory left, shaking his head in disbelief, James set to work. He knew he had a tough road ahead, but he was undeterred. He had one advantage that nobody else had, his mind. Sitting under the dim light of his garage, James closed his eyes for a moment, letting the image of the car's engine flood his mind. He could see it clearly, even without taking the car apart. His memory was his secret weapon, and he would use it to his full advantage. The first thing James did was carefully examine every component of the engine. His memory allowed him to recall the precise details of similar models he had worked on in the past. As he worked through each part of the car, the puzzle began to unfold in his mind. He identified the issue within hours, a wiring fault in the electrical system that was causing the engine to misfire. It wasn't the simplest fix, but it wasn't beyond him. For the next several days, James worked day and night, often foregoing sleep. He meticulously rebuilt the engine, replacing faulty components and rewiring parts as needed. His fingers moved with a practiced ease, guided not just by skill, but by the mental blueprint that he had formed in his head. The work wasn't glamorous, but it was precise, and it was working. When the day came for Gregory to return, James was ready. The car was sitting in the corner of the garage, its engine purring quietly as if it had never been broken. James wiped his hands on a rag, standing back and admiring the work he had done. The door of the garage creaked open, and Gregory stepped inside. He was shocked to see the car sitting there, looking as good as new. "No way," Gregory muttered, walking closer to inspect the vehicle. James stood still, waiting for Gregory's reaction. He knew the man wouldn't believe it until he saw the car running. With a confident smile, James nodded. "Go ahead. Start it up." Gregory hesitated for a moment, then climbed into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine roared to life without a hitch. Gregory sat there, stunned. He revved the engine a few times, testing its power, before turning to James, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You actually did it," Gregory said, his voice low. "I didn't think you could, but you did. I owe you more than just $1, don't I?" James didn't respond at first. He didn't care about the money. What mattered to him was proving that his memory, his skill, and his determination could achieve what others thought was impossible. But Gregory wasn't done yet. "You've got a gift, James," Gregory said. "I've been watching you, and I think I've got an offer that you can't refuse. I have connections to some of the biggest automotive companies in the world, and I want you to work for me. I'm offering you $1 million job to become my personal mechanic and consultant. You'll have access to the best tools, the best resources, and a team of experts. But only if you're willing to leave this garage and join me." James stood there for a long moment, taking in the offer. It was more than he had ever dreamed of. $1 million. A chance to work with the best. But despite the allure of wealth and fame, James knew one thing for certain: he had already proven to himself what he could do. He didn't need the recognition. He didn't need the fancy job. All he needed was his love for fixing engines and his belief in his own abilities. Still, the offer was tempting. Gregory was offering him a chance at a new life, one far beyond the confines of his small garage. "I'll take the job," James said finally, his voice steady. "But on one condition: I'll only work with the cars I choose. And I'll keep my own workshop my way." Gregory smiled, extending his hand. "You've got yourself a deal." The next day, James became more than just a mechanic. He became an icon, a man who had rebuilt a car with nothing but his memory and a relentless drive to prove himself. And though he now had the resources to achieve anything, he remained grounded, always remembering where he came from and what had made him great. Want to hear more inspiring stories like this? Subscribe to Expect Stories and get your daily dose of incredible, life-changing moments that show how the impossible can be made possible.